So it's a beautiful morning, July the 2nd, and as you can see, I've got a much better view this morning than you have. I was just sitting outside practicing Zazen and as I often do, reflecting on mahā-puruṣa-vitarkāḥ, the thought of a great person, called in Japanese hachi-dainin-gaku, the 8 thoughts or reflections of a great person. Dai means great, nin means person, gaku means reflect, truth, thought. In Sanskrit, mahā means great, purusha means man or person, human being, and vitarka means thoughts. So the last chapter of the 95 chapter edition of Shobo-nen, written by Master Dogen, is titled hachi-dainin-gaku, and there's very little commentary on it by Master Dogen. He just quotes an old Chinese sutra, and I tried to find what that sutra originally was in Sanskrit, and that's one of the things that led me back to Ashvaghosha. And Ashvaghosha does indeed cover the mahā-purusha-vitarkāḥ in a chapter of Buddha Charita, which actually doesn't exist in Sanskrit anymore. But when you look at the Tibetan translation, you can see there's a lot of correspondence. The metaphors that Ashvaghosha uses are reproduced in the chapter of Shobo-nen called hachi-dainin-gaku. For example, the first truth, sho-yoku in Japanese, alpecchu in Sanskrit, means small desire, wanting little, not being too ambitious, having low expectations, that kind of thing. And the metaphor for that is it's to have small desire is already to be on liberation's path. So it's a metaphor for path. And then the second truth, saṁtuṣṭi in Sanskrit, satisfaction. In Japanese, chi-soku, knowing satisfaction, contentment. And the metaphor that's used in that is, or the clarification is that a person who knows satisfaction is happy lying on the ground, whereas a person who doesn't know satisfaction, even if they're in a luxurious bed, they're not happy, they're not satisfied. And then the third one is alpecchu saṁtuṣṭi praviveka. Praviveka means complete seclusion. In Japanese, gyo-jakujo. Gyo means enjoy, and jakujo means peace and quiet. So it's explained as living alone in a quiet place, enjoying seclusion. And a metaphor there is birds. When many birds perch on a small branch, there's a danger the branch will break. Or there again, an old elephant that's got stuck in the mud. It's like I used to feel like that when I was living in Aylesbury sometimes, and I hankered after living here in France. But like an old elephant stuck in the mud, I struggle to get away from Aylesbury sometimes. And with economic situations being as they are, I'm still struggling like that a little bit, because to live here in seclusion requires a sort of an economic basis. You know, I'm growing my own vegetables and so on, but still there's expenses, property tax, and so the struggle of the old elephant to get out of the mud continues. And then the fourth one is viriya in Sanskrit, effort or in Japanese, gon-shojin, to employ shojin. Shojin means like in shojin rori, persevering effort. Shojin rori means persevering effort cuisine. So it's very much part of Japanese culture to keep making an effort. Don't give up. Persevere. So in Sanskrit, viriya, and the usual metaphors are, if you want to make a fire out of rubbing a fire stick, then, you know, as Bear Grylls or Ray Mears would constantly emphasise, you've got to keep at it. Don't give up. Keep persevering. So particularly when the Buddha spoke of making a persevering effort, he meant towards peace. Towards peace. I was listening to Benjamin Zephaniah on the radio a few weeks ago. He was talking about he's attracted to the teaching of Master Bodhidharma, and he spoke about his own quest for peace. Came from Birmingham, as I did, although he was more like the other side of the tracks, in more ways than one. I went to the posh school and was the son of a high-ranking police officer who was, shall we say, not always fond of what he called jungle bunnies. So some interesting there that we're both attracted to the teaching of Master Bodhidharma, although coming from sort of opposite ends of the spectrum in Birmingham. So the quest for peace. At the end of the chapter, the longest chapter of Soundarananda, Handsome Nanda by Asvaghosha, that chapter is called Communication of the Noble Truths. And so at the end of the chapter, the Buddha really praises individuals who have made their own individual quest for peace. And so the Buddha says at the end of that chapter, for in persevering effort, in vīrya, lies all growth. So I haven't posted a video for a number of months. I've been very busy. Well, I was ill for a couple of weeks, had the flu badly, was convinced I had Lyme disease, being a bit of a drama queen as I tend to be when I get ill, borders on death's door, but in fact it was just a flu. But also I've been doing a lot of work in the garden, which is looking very nice at the moment. But reflecting on cultivation, what the meaning is, what it means to grow, to cultivate things. Of course, if you're talking about gardening, it's not really the gardener who grows anything. It's the growth is, you know, when you do gardening, you reflect. Growth is not something which one does really. More like creating the conditions in which growth can happen. But we'll talk more about the meaning of cultivation in relation to the seventh of the 8 thoughts, which is to do with cultivating wisdom. So to recap, sho-yoku, chi-soku, small desire, no satisfaction, gyo-jakujo, gon-shojin, enjoy peace and quiet, employ persevering effort. So in Sanskrit, alpecchu, saṁtuṣṭi, small desire, satisfaction. Praviveka, complete seclusion. Vīrya, persevering effort. Then the 5th one in Sanskrit, smṛti, mindfulness, awareness, attention. In Japanese, fu-bo-nen. Fu means not, bo means losing, and nen means mindfulness, awareness. So the metaphor, a suit of armour going into battle. So it includes the meaning of vigilance, not being susceptible to the faults, which are like our enemies: lust, anger, ill will, stupidity, ignorance, stupid worrying, greed and fear, the faults. So thanks to Ananda Jyoti Bhikkhu in Thailand and Malaysia and so on, there's a very good resource, ancientbuddhisttexts.net, and the best place to study mindfulness really is the Mahā-satipatthana Sutta, the sutta on the great sutta on the foundations of mindfulness. And in that sutta we have it's really a sutta everybody who practices zazen should study, and I think the meaning of it hasn't been well understood by the Theravadins. So the first stage in the mindfulness of breathing, we're talking about the section on mindfulness of anapana sati. So sati in Pali is the same as smṛti in Sanskrit. It's from the verbal root smṛti in Sanskrit means to remember. So it means awareness, attention, vigilance, but originally the root means remembering. So it has to do with that part of the brain which is to do with memory. So the sutta begins by saying, the first thing the sutta says, that the bhikshu goes to the forest and sits under the, for example, under a tree or some secluded place, and urjum kaya upadaya, points the body directly up. Urjum means, it doesn't mean to sit up straight, because it has more of a connotation of direction. Direct the body upwards. So direct the body upwards, and thus establish mindfulness to the full. Okay, so it has to do with posture, although posture is not a good word. It's directing the body upwards. Sitting in full lotus and directing the body upwards is a first step in practicing mindfulness. So the first step is going to a secluded place in nature, sitting in full lotus, directing the body upwards, and thus one establishes mindfulness. So this is very much in line with Alexander's thinking. Breathing is a secondary activity. The first thing to be aware of is, I shouldn't say posture is a misleading word. The first thing to be aware of is, are you directing yourself upwards? How are you pulling yourself down? And then, without diving into want to change things for the better, the first thing is more inhibitory. Recognize that a long in-breath is long, and a long out-breath is long, and a short in-breath is short, and a short out-breath is short. So it's really inhibitory. You're not trying to change anything. I often sort of joke that I spend the first half hour of my zazen in the morning feeling sorry for myself, and that's true. On that subject, I bought a fig tree on sale in the local DIY store in December. It was a sad-looking fig tree that had gone through the whole of 2018 unsold and unloved. So I got it cheap. So I thought, I'll plant it and take good care of it and see if it revives. And so I planted it in December, mulched it and kept it watered. And then I think in April, the cows got in from the neighbour's field, which was a lesson in itself, because I was having a nap in the early afternoon. I could hear the cows mooing outside the front door. So I went down, and they couldn't get into my garden because my car was parked in their way. They were in my neighbour's garden. So I jumped in the car and went to the local farmer to tell him the cows had got out, and there was no one around there. So when I drove back, the cows had taken the opportunity, since my car had gone, to get into my garden, and they were busy munching all the blossoms and leaves off my fruit trees. So the little fig tree had just started to show little green buds, and I don't think it escaped the attention of the cows. So that was a setback. Nevertheless, through April and May, I kept watering it and regularly. But then through May, it seemed to have given up the ghost, and whatever little green buds had started to sprout, there was no sign of life there. So by the time we got to June, I gave up watering it, and I just gave up on it. And then, hey presto, after a couple of weeks, it started sprouting little green leaves again. And what this put me in mind of was on Gardener's Question Time a few months ago. One of the panelists said plants are very capable of sulking, and that stuck in my mind, because we think of sulking as being something more cognitive when human beings do it, but that's precisely what the little fig tree was doing. It had been sulking. It was unsold and unloved through 2018. Then the cows bothered it, and so it sort of like retreated into itself. But the roots were still making their effort, and now it's growing nicely. So just made me reflect about sulking. In my own way, through practicing Zazen, I realised the same thing, that if you're deeply offended, if you've been deeply offended as a person, then sulking is a sort of a natural way of healing, really, of not trying to grow, but just sort of retreating into a inhibitory state. And so what I'm saying really is I realised that I'd been in a massive sulk. I joked to a friend on Facebook, my name is Mike, and I've been a sulker for 35 years. And my friend came back and said, it's long, only 35 years, surely not, because he's known me for longer than that. And when I was about 18 months old, according to my medical records, I suffered from what's called testicular torsion, and so a testicle twisted, and it was extremely painful. And the medical records show that a locum came along and diagnosed mumps and gave me antibiotics, I think. Apparently the notes say that I was crying for a period of 24 hours or so, and then the crying stopped. Of course, the crying stopped because, having been twisted, the blood supply to the testicle was cut off, and it atrophied. So that was the end of the pain, but it was also the end of the testicle. So I've got no conscious memory of it, but it must have been incredibly painful. And my mother was, she was a teenage pregnancy. She wouldn't know what was going on. And I think at a very deep level, I've been sulking ever since then. It was a sort of like a deep, traumatic, painful thing, and I was crying out, trying to tell people I was in pain, and people weren't listening to me. And so ever since then, really, I've been sulking, and at the same time, sort of shouting the truth at people in such a way that they don't listen to me. But then there've been other things along the way. that have been like the fig tree being nibbled by the cows, things that deeply offended me. Like, for example, I served a Zen teacher, Gudo Nishijima. When I was 23, I vowed to myself and wrote it down on a piece of card cut out from a cornflakes pack, actually. I vowed that I would make any sacrifice to get the Shobogenzo translation done. That was when I was 23. Then when I was 37, before we got to the finishing line of the marathon together, Nishijima Sensei sort of decided that he'd go ahead alone. He betrayed our partnership. That was very, very deeply a very, very deep offence. And he didn't realise he'd done anything wrong, because he thought it was his own translation. He didn't realise the extent to which our translation stemmed from my vow. So he didn't realise that he deeply offended me. And in fact, practically the last email correspondence we had, he asked me, he asked me, I don't criticise you. I haven't criticised you. Why have you criticised me so severely? And I said, because you hurt my mind so deeply in 1997. When you cut me out of the decision-making process to do with the Shobogenzo translation. It was like I was an artist, a painter, and someone had come on without asking me and touched at my work. I just found it deeply, deeply hurtful and offensive. And so, again, I went into a sulk, like the fig tree went into a sulk. And I would wake up every morning and practice Zazen and be in a sulk. But I realised over the years, if you're in a sulk, if the fig tree's in a sulk, there's no point, trying to give it some chemical boost to get it out of its sulk or whatever. Sulking is a natural response. If the plant has been offended, that's what it does in nature, and then it either dies or it revives. So I'm trying to explain the wisdom of, you begin mindfulness of breathing not by trying to calm your breath. We're not, faking a deep breathing. You start off by being just whatever's going on, you leave it as it is. So that's what the Buddha said, let a long breath be long, let a short breath be short. But having sulked, if you like, or left things as they are for a amount of time, what I would find is that quite naturally you get fed up of that. After a while, you start feeling better just because of the physical act of sitting in full lotus, and you get more optimistic. And so the next stage in mindfulness is in Pali, sabakaya pati samvedhi asasi samiti sikati. One trains oneself, iti, thinking, so sikati means train, one trains, iti, thus, sabakaya, the whole body, pati samvedhi, being reflectively aware, being mindful. So being mindful of the whole body, I will breathe in, asasi sami, future, I will breathe in, tisikati. Thus, iti, sikati, trains oneself. Sabakaya pati-samvedi asasi samiti sikati. One trains oneself with the awareness that being aware of the whole body, I will breathe in. Sabakaya pati-samvedi pasasi samiti sikati. One trains oneself, sikati, ti, thus. Sabakaya pati-samvedi, being aware of the whole body. Pasasi sami, I will breathe out. So it's future tense. That means, so you're not trying to be aware of the here and now. It's more orienting yourself to the future. Your intention is to breathe in and breathe out with awareness of the whole body. See, it's more about awareness, mindfulness of the whole body than it is about breathing. Breathing is a secondary thing which will do itself, as Alexander said. With awareness of the whole self, the whole body. So, to encourage awareness of the whole self, the whole body, is precisely what the Alexander directions are about. Having practiced inhibition, at the beginning of the sutra, this is letting the neck be free, to let the head go forward and up, to let the back lengthen and widen, sending the knees forwards and away, pulling to the elbows and widening across the upper part of the arms as you widen the back. All together, one after the other. Keep going round those directions until they become one. So this is precisely what the meaning is of Sabakaya pati-samvedi. If you want to understand what the meaning of Sabakaya pati-samvedi is, there's no better way than to study the discoveries of A.F.M. Alexander. Then, the next stage in the Mindfulness Sutra points ahead to the later thoughts of a great person in a way. So they're progressive. Sho-yoku, chi-soku, alpecchu, saṁtuṣṭi. Having small desire, knowing satisfaction. That's not difficult to understand. Okay, but then as we go through the 8, we come to the final one, which is nishprapansha. Not objectifying things. That one is difficult to understand. So there's a progression. And in the Mindfulness Sutta also it's progressive. You start off with just this very simple inhibition, leave things as they are. Then gradually you get a little bit more ambitious in what you're aiming for. So the third stage, or the fourth stage in the Mindfulness Sutta, the Buddha says, Pasambayam kaya sankharan asasi samiti sikati. Pasambayam kaya sankharan pasasi samiti sikati. So, sikati, again, one trains oneself. Ti, thus. Pasambayam is causative. So in Sanskrit, which I understand better than Pali, it would be prashamayam, and that would be causative present participle of prasham. And prasham means to extinguish. So there's a phrase in Soundarananda, Canto 15, which I like to recite to myself, which says, it says, Tishtat yanushayas tesham janogniriva pasmana sate bhavanaya saumya prasham yognirivambuna. So to translate, what lies behind those desires remains, or literally, the sleeper alongside of them remains. So he's talking about desires. And so he's saying, anushayas, what sleeps alongside, the sleeper alongside, tesham, of them, tishtati, it endures, it remains. Then the metaphor, like embers covered in ash. So chano means covered, agni, fire, basmana, with ash. So what lies behind those desires sleeps on like embers covered with ash. Sate bhavanaya saumya. Prashamya. So prashamya means it is to be extinguished. Te, by you. Sa prashamya, it is to be extinguished. Te, by you. For you. It is for you to extinguish. Bhavanaya, through cultivation or with meditation. Saumya, my friend. Prashamyo gniri vambuna. Prashamya, again to be extinguished. Agnir, fire. Eve, like. Ambuna, with water. So you are to extinguish it, my friend. Like fire, like extinguishing fire with water. Tishtat yanushyaste sham chanogniriva basmana sate bhavanaya saumya prashamyogniri vambuna. So the root is prasham, to extinguish. So sham means to wear out, to be exhausted. So in the metaphor of the embers, obviously it means to extinguish, to put out. So in the Mindfulness Sutra, we got the Pali word pasambayam. So it's in Sanskrit with prashamayan. So it means to extinguish, or to let it cease, to let it wear out, to let it exhaust. I think in the Mindfulness Sutra it has a less active sense, probably. So if you're putting out a fire, you're actually doing something, you're throwing water on the fire. But it can also include the meaning of just letting it die out, without actively having to do anything. Like letting the fig tree bloom again. You can create the conditions for it to revive, but you can't actually, you intervene and try and sort of push it into reviving. That isn't going to work so well. So pasambayam kaya sankaran. So kaya sankara means in Sanskrit it would be kaya samskara. So the samskara of a body, or the body samskara. Kaya means body. Now, in the Theravadin tradition, they understand that to mean causing the samskara, causing the body samskara to cease. So they, in other words, calming the physical samskaras. That's how I understood it when I first started reciting it. So that the people who practice mindfulness in Southeast Asia think it means to calm the breath. So like a direct yoga intervention to calm the breath. Now, on the basis of Alexander's work, I understood it. When I first came to recite it, I thought it meant you calm the doings, you stop the doing, and as the primary thing, you stop doing, as I was taught to stop doing by Marjorie Barlow. That's a whole other discussion, what it means to stop doing. But then you stop doing, and then that has indirectly influences the breath for the better, and you're aware of that. But then from studying Nagarjuna's Mula Madhyamaka Karika, MMK, the middle in root verses, or the verse from the radical middle is another way of translating it. Verse from the radical middle. From studying that over the last few years, I began to understand, I think, that the meaning of Kaya Sankara is not physical doings, it's the samskara of a body. Because in Nagarjuna's teaching, a body is empty. So when we think of the whole body being informed with thought, as in Alexander work, that is a kind of objectification where we're conceiving that there's such a thing as a whole body, as a separately existing thing. But Nagarjuna's teaching is that that is only conventionally true, that we are a separately existing body, that there is a separately existing body. It's useful. We can't get by without that level of truth, the conventional truth. But the ultimate truth is that there is no body separate from anything else. When I'm breathing in and breathing out, I'm breathing oxygen that's been produced by the trees of the forest. So the old cliche, there is no place where Mike begins and the forest ends, or vice versa. So that's the ultimate truth, which is we're led to by pasambayam kaya sankara nasasi samiti sikati, by training oneself thus, causing the samskara of a body to be extinguished, or letting go of the confection of a body. So samskara means to put together, to put sam together, kara to make together, to construct, to compose, to confect. So the point is that ultimately the body is a confection, a contrivance. Sam together, kara make. So confection is the very literal translation. Fect in Latin is the same as kri in Sanskrit, to make. So the body is a confection ultimately. The concept of a separately existing body is a confection, a contrivance. So ultimately the mindfulness of breathing is to remind us, we remember, that's the meaning of smṛti, remembering that the body is a samskara, that there's no separation, everything's empty. All the things that we conceive of as things, the big tree over there, you can see that big tree. You look at it, and or the big oak tree in my neighbour's garden, if you can see that. Even more imposing. You look at that and you think, it's got its own sort of dignity and majesty. So, but that's your first impression. Like a child looking at the moon as you're walking along a hedge, and the moon seems to be walking with you. That's your first impression. What a magnificent, independently existing, strong thing. I'd like to be like that. Like an independent oak tree. But then when you think about it again, it's not independent at all. It's totally dependent on the conditions for its growing, the sunlight, the water, the nutrients in the soil, etc. So in that sense, pasambayam kaya sankara asasi samiti sikati, one trains oneself remembering that. The body's a confection, okay, and let that confection, that contrivance evaporate. To let it evaporate, let it dissolve away, so that the breathing is not me breathing. Okay, so that's my long-winded commentary on mindfulness of breathing, smṛti, fu-bo-nen in Japanese, the fifth of the 8 thoughts of a great person. And then it's progressive, because the next one is samādhi in Sanskrit, and in Japanese shu-zenjo. Shu means cultivate. Zen means Zen or dhyana in Sanskrit, meditative, meditation, meditative, and jo means balance or fixity, ironically enough. So, borrowing T.S. Eliot's phrase that Marjorie Barlow liked, stillness without fixity. I think T.S. Eliot said, it's stillness, but do not call it fixity. So jo means stillness or balance. But the Chinese character means fixed. So if you go to a Japanese restaurant, they offer a te-shoku. So te, the character is pronounced te or jo, and it means fixed. It means, so the te-shoku means fixed meal or set menu. So it's fixed. It's not a la carte. It's the set menu. It's the special. But the fixed menu. So it's interesting, isn't it? Fixity is the enemy. In Alexander work, certainly. But actually, what we want is something like fixity. It's like bonk. It kind of clicks into place. It's like the snooker player who it just clicks. He's in the zone. So, how do you understand samādhi? Samādhi in Sanskrit, sam again means together, like the Latin prefix con. So, adi means to put. So samādhi means put together. So it means concentration. It's often translated concentration, which is fair enough. That sense of things clicking together, concentration. But the metaphor, if I remember rightly, is something like a dike, so that the water doesn't overflow. Now that has connotations of what's called in Sanskrit asrava, in Pali asava, which Ananda Jyoti Bhikkhu translates as pollutants, which I think it's a very good translation. So there's that sense of if things aren't contained, if flowing water, let's say dirty water, sewage water, is not contained in the dike, it'll flow out. And that's what asrava means. A means out or in. Actually, in. A means more in. And srava means flow. So inflows. So the sense is that your mind is originally clear, but with greed and fear and hatred, the mind, those flow into the mind and cause us not to see clearly. So they're like pollutants. That's how Ananda Jyoti Bhikkhu translates it and how he explained it to me. And to me, when I was trying to understand what asrava meant, that made sense. So in Shobogenzo, we have the word muro. It means without leakages. And I didn't really understand what that meant, but that's what it means. It means, so leakages means things like lust and anger and fear and ignorance. They're like leaking into the mind, polluting the mind and stopping us from seeing clearly. And samādhi is like a dike. So when you're integrated, it prevents, when you're balanced, it prevents those harmful influences leaking in. So this relates very much to what Nishijima Sensei called, my teacher Gudo Nishijima, he called the balance of the autonomic nervous system. For for him, samadhi was the balance of the autonomic nervous system. But I was not satisfied with that, and I think I was right not to be satisfied with that, because it's a reductive explanation which only looks at unconsciousness. For Nishijima Sensei, samadhi was an unconscious state, the state of the autonomic nervous system. But I would argue that what the Buddha's talking about is an integration of the conscious and the unconscious. And so studying the Alexander technique led me on to study of primitive reflexes, helping children with dyslexia and dyspraxia who struggle with primitive reflexes. And the essence of that work really is the remedial side of it is these very, very slow inhibitory movements. And, some of them are a little bit like Qigong. And so when you get the children to practice those movements, it's like a very meditative state. Sometimes you start with a very, very slow rocking movement. We call it embryonic rock. It's like back to the womb. And you're doing these very, very slow movements. But the essence of those inhibitory movements is you're integrating the conscious and the unconscious. They're very meditative. It's not just an unconscious doing. It's the bringing together the conscious and the unconscious of the awareness and the reflex, the intention and the reflex. Again, Nagarjuna, if we explored that on the basis of emptiness, we would say there is no conscious, there is no unconscious, there is no intention, there is no reflex as a separate thing. And in fact, one of the sort of early pointers I had to what Nagarjuna was getting at was from studying reflexes. I read a book by Charles Sherrington called The Integrative Action of the Nervous System, which is a nice title, Integrative Action. So you're talking about samadhi. Sherrington was a great expert on reflexes, but he realised that the nervous system, in fact the whole organism, works as a whole within its environment, within a field. So he spoke about the convenient fiction of the simple reflex. So that again relates exactly to what the Buddha is talking about. Kaya samskara, the samskara of a body, the samskara of a simple reflex, the samskara of the autonomic nervous system. So samadhi is not only being aware of that, it's actually realizing it as a psychophysical state in which everything is integrated. So ultimately, not only... So when Master Dogen came back from China, when he was still in his mid-20s, he wrote that the secret of in Fukan Zazengi, his instructions for how to practice Zazen, he wrote that the secret of Zazen is in 4 Chinese characters, Ji-jo I-pen. I-pen means one piece. Jo means become, and Ji means naturally or spontaneously. So naturally become one piece. And Nishijima Sensei said it means one piece of body and mind. But again, that's still in the realm of convenient fictions, because the body and the mind are separately existing things. Even if we talk about psychophysical unity, it's still a convenient fiction, because there is no psychophysical unity of a person separated from the forest and the sunshine. So ipen, one piece, means he's talking about realizing the truth of emptiness, where there is no separate anything. So it's not one and it's not many. It's not singular, it's not plural. Shu-zenjo, cultivate balanced stillness. Samadhi. integration. So then we come on to number 7, prajna. In Japanese, shu-chie. Chie means wisdom. Shu again means cultivate. So cultivate wisdom. Prajna. Jna means to know, and pra is like an emphatic suffix, prefix. So prajna, really knowing, understanding. Shu-chie, cultivating wisdom, cultivating understanding. So as I said, the eight truths, the 8 thoughts are in some sense progressive, and without clinging to my own story, which is atmavad or badana, one of the 4 kinds of clinging, I can't help noticing that my own growth, if there has been growth over the last 60 years, has been progressing along with the eight thoughts. So I came back to England in 1990, end of 1994, to train as a teacher of the Alexander technique, with a view really to understanding what the connections between posture and awareness, or posture and mindfulness. And ironically, it turns out that the connection is that you give up the samskara of posture. Okay, so people are often attracted to the Alexander technique because they want to have better posture. But ironically, what actually turns out is they drop off the misconception of posture. But the key to that is mindfulness. But then, because my Alexander head of training, Ray Evans, was a kind of an expert on the subject of primitive reflexes, that led me into an exploration of the relation between Alexander work and reflexes, which is to do with samādhi. So children who suffer from dyslexia and dyspraxia, the problem has to do with vestibular reflexes and the vestibular sense. So it's you can say it's more of a physiological, unconscious problem than certainly most parents and teachers are prone to realise. Teachers will look at a child wiggling about in the classroom, maybe standing up when everybody else is sitting down, and the teacher's asked the child to sit down but he's still standing up. The teacher might interpret that as being awkward, or give it a psychological explanation, whereas it's well understood if you understand about the symmetrical tonic neck reflex. See, as I sit here sending my knees forwards and away, I understand that sending the knees forwards and away represents the inhibition of the symmetrical tonic neck reflex. If you study what the symmetrical tonic neck reflex is, if you Google it, you'll understand. You'll work it out for yourself, because it's so obvious once you've understood it. When you're practicing Zazen, if you're in the grip of the reflex, that makes your hips tight. And so to let the knees forwards and away is the antidote to that tightness. Of course, because we turn everything into doing, you've got people in the Deshimaru lineage in France all talk about pushing the floor with your knees. Well, that's doing. That's ignorance. Doing born of ignorance. That's samskaras born of ignorance. Avidyayam nirudayam samskaranama sambhavaha. Where ignorance is being ceased, there is a non-coming to being of doings. conversely, avidvan karakas tasman, therefore the ignorant one is the doer, navidvams tattvadarshanat, not the wise one, because of tattvadarsana, realization of reality. So pushing the floor with your knees is not realization of reality. It's doings born of ignorance. The prologue. I'm digressing. So, studying the reflexes helped me come to a better understanding of samādhi. But then, through trials and tribulations, between 2007, when I got this enormous shock, that I felt I'd been betrayed by my translation partner and Zen master, and then that was 1997 when that happened. Then in 2006, Gudo Nishijima he appointed Brad Warner as his successor, and again this was like a really, really deeply offensive thing, because Brad Warner had been very disrespectful to me in public, making reference to my old girlfriend and so on. So even though he benefited so much from my work, he was very, very disrespectful, and so it was a real insult that he'd made Brad his successor. I mean, I respected his decision like an old rugby player respecting the bad decision of a referee. That's what it felt like, you know. Referee's decision is final, so I respected the decision, but it was a big shock. It was like I was prepared for it, like you're prepared to jump into cold water. You know it's going to be cold, but when you actually jump in, there's a physical reaction, big shock, like being nibbled by cows or something. So it was a deep shock, and I realised that my understanding wasn't deep enough. So the metaphor that I used was the water was dirty, you know, and the whole Shobogenzo thing was like a poisoned well. So I needed to go further upstream to find clearer water. That was a definite metaphor that came to my mind. I needed to go further upstream to find clearer water. So I went back and started studying Sanskrit, and translated the two epic poems of Asvaghosha, which was Soundarananda, which fortunately had just been published in an excellent translation by Linda Colville in the Clay Sanskrit Library. And it was a perfect study guide because you got the translation on one page and the Sanskrit on the other. Also, another excellent translation by E.H. Johnson, fully annotated with all of the variants of the text noted. So E.H. Johnson did a brilliant job, and another Oxford scholar, Linda Colville, sort of brought it up to date. So it was a perfect way of starting to study Sanskrit. It was, in a sense, I was taught Sanskrit by Asvaghosha, relying on the work of E.H. Johnson and Linda Colville. Harunaga Isaacson gave me some useful pointers as well at that point. So I started studying, trying to deepen my understanding of what the Buddha originally taught, going back to Asvaghosha. And then So the conclusion, I translated Samvrananda first and then moved to Buddha Charita, which has, I think, 27 or 28 chapters of Buddha Charita. But the Sanskrit fizzles out in chapter 14, which is called Abhisambodhi, which means the transcendent. Abhi means overarching or transcendent. Sam, together, Bodhi, awakening. So there's transcendent integral awakening. So the Buddha's enlightenment, in other words. So the Sanskrit fizzles out in chapter 14. But going back to the Tibetan and looking at what Sanskrit is there, what's obvious is that for Asvaghosha, the enlightenment of the Buddha is totally bound up with emptiness, with the teaching of dependent arising. So if you want the Sanskrit for what that teaching is about, the teaching that's in Buddha Charita chapter 14, the best Sanskrit source is chapter 26 of Nagarjuna's Mula Madhyamaka Karika, which is called Dvadashanga Parikṣha, exploration of the 12 links. Punarbhavaya samskaran avidya nivrita trida abhisamskurute yamstair gatim gacchati karmabhi. The samskaras which lead to further becoming, one enveloped in ignorance does do in the three ways. And by those actions goes to one of the 5 or 6 realms in samsara. Hell, hungry ghosts, animals, human beings, gods, and asuras, enemies of gods. Punarbhavaya samskaran avidya nivrita trida abhisamskurute yamstair. So abhisamskurute means accumulates. We accumulate the samskaras, the doings that lead to further becoming. Punarbhavaya. And by those actions go to a realm. So gatim gacchati. Gatim and gacchati are both from the root gam, to go. So go to a going. It has a dynamic quality. We go in this circle of samsara, we go from one realm to the next. Vignanam samni vishate samskara pratyayam gatau samni vishteta vignane namarupam nishichyate. Divided consciousness, vignanam. So vi means to divide, it means it's like dvi, two. So vignana means two knowing or divided consciousness. Can be just translated consciousness, but if you look at the wheel of becoming, it's represented by a monkey. So the monkey mind, divided consciousness, not clear consciousness, but subject, object, body, mind. So out of ignorance, vignanam samni vishate, divided consciousness seeps in. Vignanam samni vishate samskara pratyayam gatau. Gatau, into the realm, into the going. Samskara pratyayam, with the samskaras as conditions. Okay, so out of ignorance, there are samskaras, confections, contrivances. And with those contrivances, like separate body and mind, separate tree, with those contrivances as conditions, vignanam samni vishate, divided consciousness seeps in. So originally there's no separation, but because of out of ignorance we make samskaras, confections, then divided consciousness seeps in. Samnivishta ta vignane namarupam nishityate. With the seeping in of divided consciousness, namarupam nishityate. Psychophysicality, nishityate, is instilled. So, namarupam, literally name and form, but it means psychophysicality, body and mind, psychophysicality. And so on the wheel of becoming, if you look for one of those lovely Tibetan chakras, what do they call them there? Mandala, chakra, tanka, they call it tanka, don't they? So the wheel of becoming, around the rim, you've got a blind person, ignorance, then a person making pots represents making samskaras, and then the third one, divided consciousness, is the monkey mind, picture of a monkey. Then the fourth one, psychophysicality, is a person rowing a boat. So that's our concept. There is originally no separate boat, no separate person, but we think of a pilot like a mind in a boat like a body. So that out of divided consciousness, there is the false conception of a separate body and mind, namarupam. Vignanam samnivishate samskara pratyayam gatau samnivishte ta vignane namarupam nishityate nishikte namarupe tu shadayatana sambhavaha shadayatana magamya samsparsha sampravartate. So with the seeping in of where psychophysicality is instilled, namarupe nishikte tu, but where psychophysicality is instilled, shadayatana sambhavaha, there is the coming into being of six senses. Shadayatana magamya, six senses having arrived, samsparsha sampravartate, contact arises. So on the wheel of becoming, the six senses is a house with six windows. So again, it's originally there is no house, there are no separate windows. We think of ourselves being a psychophysical unity with six senses. Those six senses in Western thoughts tend to be more passive. They're where information comes in. In Indian thoughts, so the Indian word for sense is Indra, and Indra means like the god Indra, something powerful. So in Indian thoughts, the senses are more active. So vision is not just being passive and receiving information, it's the eyes kind of going out and grabbing, making trouble. But those conceptions of six senses is again, it's a samskara. It's originally it's from ignorance. Ignorance leads to samskaras, confections. Then there's divided consciousness, number 3. Then psychophysicality, number 4. And out of psychophysicality, six senses. So it's not that six senses don't exist. They're a convention to call the six senses. To convent that separation to six senses is a contrivance. There are no separate six senses. And then, so six senses is number 5. And then number 6 is contact. And that's represented pictorially by contact, a man and a woman contacting each other. So, samsparsha sampravartate, contact arises, contact advances. So we're halfway through the 12 there. And then what Asvaghosha does, so what the traditional description does, I think, what Nagarjuna does certainly is go back. So that although we think of it as a circle going successfully from 1 to 12 and round again, we're now sort of doubling back. And so the point is, it isn't just a simple one-to-one progression. The 12 links are all empty. So none of them exists on its own. They're all a function of each other. So again, although it speaks against myself, when I first started studying this, I had the conception like, end gaining is the enemy, or ignorance is the enemy. So it's like the Americans with their war on terror or war on drugs. It's, isolate the enemy and destroy. That's doings born of ignorance. So in that spirit, what we're doing here is kind of doubling back. We've gone from 1 to 6 in the linear fashion, and then we're doubling back. So the next thing is, it says, chakshush pratitya rupam cha samanvaharam evacha nama rupam pratityaivam vignanam sampravartate. So chakshush means eye or eyesight. So that relates to number 5, the 6 senses. Chakshush is the first, is this typical example of the 6 senses, the eyesight. So chakshush pratitya, depending on the eye, chakshush pratitya rupam cha, and rupam, form. So rupam is one of the namarupam, name and form, psychophysicality. So depending on the eye and the physical form, chakshush pratitya rupam cha samanvaharam evacha, and indeed evacha, samanvahara, the combination, the coming together of eye and form. Chakshush pratitya rupam cha samanvaharam evacha nama rupam pratitya evam, thus, in other words, pratitya, depending on namarupa, psychophysicality. So in other words, depending on psychophysicality. So psychophysicality being number 4. Namarupam pratitya evam vignanam sampravartate. Divided consciousness occurs. So what he's saying is, we've seen before that divided consciousness, number 3, depends on samskaras, number 2, which depends on ignorance, number 1. But now he's saying that divided consciousness, number 3, depends on psychophysicality, number 4. You see, so it's not just linear, it's doubling back. Nama rupam pratitya evam vignanam sampravartate, consciousness occurs. Then it says samni patas trayanam yo rupa vignana chakshusham. Samni patas, the combination, trayanam, of the 3. Samni patas trayanam yo rupa vignana chakshusham. So the 3 are rupa, form, physical form, vignana, consciousness, and I. So rupa, physical form, belongs to number 4. Vignana is number 3, and chakshush is number 5. So relying on the combination of all those, samni patas trayanam yo, whatever combination there is of the 3, rupa, vignana, chakshusham, form, divided consciousness, and I, sparsha sa, that is contact, tasmat spasaccha, and from that contact, vedana sampravartate, there occurs feeling. So now we're back again in the linear progression from 1 to 12. So number 7 is feeling, and that is pictured as somebody with an arrow through the eye. So feeling is Vedana means feeling, and at the same time it means pain, it means suffering. Vedana pratyaya trishna, with feeling as condition, or with feeling as cause, depending on feeling, there is Vedana pratyaya trishna, thirsting. Trishna means thirst or craving. Vedana pratyaya trishna, Vedanartam hi trishyate, because he trishyate is thirsted after, Vedanartam, the object of thirsting. Vedana pratyaya trishna, Vedanartam hi trishyate. With feeling as condition, there is thirsting, because the object of feeling is thirsted after. Trishyamana upadanam upadate chaturvidam. Trishyamana, well, thirsting is going on. Upadanam, clinging, taking hold, grasping. Upadate, so takes hold. Chaturvidam, in 4 ways. So to understand the business of taking hold, you have to realize that the Buddha used the word upadana, taking hold, like a fire taking hold, in his explanation of the skandhas. So the skandhas are the 5 constituents of, is it 5 or 6 skandhas? 5, isn't it? Go-un, 5 skandhas. The 5 skandhas are the constituents of being. So, of course, it's just a convenient fiction. There are no 5 skandhas. But the Buddha used the 5 skandhas to help us reflect on the fact that the self is itself a convenient fiction. And so he used the metaphor of a fire taking hold. Upadana means to take hold, to grasp. But a fire takes hold, and in the same way, our concept of self comes from us taking hold of the 5 skandhas, like a fire taking hold. So upadana means taking hold, but it also means clinging, grasping. And pictorially, it's represented by a person grasping for fruit. And so upadanam upadat trishyamana upadanam upadate chaturvidam. So when the thirsting is going on, taking hold, clinging takes hold in the 4 ways. And those 4 ways, in Sanskrit, the first one is shilavrat upadana, clinging to, now this is often translated, including by me, clinging to mere rules and vows of practice, as if there's something wrong in rules. But Shila it doesn't mean that. So again, Ananda Jyoti Bhikkhu pointed this out to me. It's not that Shila Vrata has got any pejorative sense. Shila means virtue or discipline, integrity. Vrata means vows of practice. There's no sense in which they're bad things. Unless what's bad is clinging to them. Okay, that's so to translate clinging to mere rules is to miss the point. It's the fault is not in the rules, the fault is in the clinging. So the first kind of clinging the Buddha warned against, ironically enough, is clinging to Shīla-vrata. So clinging to daily practice of Zazen is a kind of ignorance. So the most valuable thing there is daily practice of Zazen. But clinging to it is to be stuck in the wheel of samskara. So, second one is karma padana, clinging to desires, clinging to likes. This one makes me reflect on sort of Twitter and Facebook. You know, we see that we put our little post up, and we see there is clinging there. We don't want to be ignored. You know, we want the likes to roll in. That's a kind of karma padana, clinging to loves, clinging to desires, clinging to likes. And then, interesting one I alluded to before, atma-vāda-padana. Atma means self, and vada means speaking or story or narrative. So atma-vāda-padana, clinging to a self-narrative, clinging to one's own story. And then the fourth one is drishtya-padana, clinging to views. So this is something that Nagarjuna explores in detail, particularly in the final chapter of MMK. The final verse of which is Sarva Drishti Prahanaya Yasa Dharma Madeshayat Anukam Pamupadaya Tam Namasyami Gautamam. Sarva Drishti Prahanaya, in the direction of abandoning all views. Sarva Drishti, all views. Yasa Dharma Madeshayat, he who taught the truth, he who taught the wonderful Dharma. Anukam Pamupadaya. This is ironic. Taking hold, clinging to compassion, or depending on compassion. Tam namasyami Gautamam. I bow to him, Gautama. So drishtyopadana, clinging to views, is the last kind of clinging. Upadane sati bhava, upadatuhu pravartate. Where there is clinging, the becoming of the clinger takes place. Upadane sati bhava, bhava becoming. Upadatuhu pravartate, occurs, advances, pravartate, upadatuhu, of the clinger. So bhava becoming, on the wheel of becoming, bhava chakra. Bhava means becoming, chakra wheel. On the wheel of becoming, becoming itself is represented by a pregnant woman. Pancha skanda sacha bhava. So the five skandhas, pancha skanda, the five skandhas, themselves are becoming, are becoming itself. So the five skandhas, beginning with rupa, the physical body, consciousness and so on, all the five constituents of being are a kind of becoming. They don't have intrinsic, separate existence. They're part of the wheel of becoming. Pancha skanda sacha bhava, bhavajjati pravartate. And out of becoming, birth arises. So this is a birth. Jati is link number 11, and on the wheel of becoming it's represented naturally enough by a woman giving birth. Jara marana dukkadi. So dukkadi means suffering, etc. Sufferings, etc. Jara, old age, marana, death. So the sufferings, etc. of old age and death. So the etc. then is illustrated by all kinds of suffering. And I always think this next part has a sort of a humorous feel. I was talking about me sulking earlier on. It's something like that, really. It's kind of looking objectively, listing all the ways in which we kind of sulk and are miserable. So, jara marana dukkadi, shoka sa paridevana, shoka, grief, sa paridevana, sa means accompanied by, along with, paridevana, lamenting, complaining, grumbling, moaning. Jara marana dukkadi shoka sa paridevana daurmanasyam upayasa. Daurmanasyam is daur is like dur, hard. It's like the do of dukkha, something not going well. So manasya is of the mind. So downheartedness, kind of miserableness, being miserable, being downhearted. Daurmanasyam upayasa, troubles. Jara marana dukkadi shoka sa paridevana daurmanasyam upayasa. So the sufferings of old age and death, grieving accompanied by bewailing, downheartedness, troubles. Jate, jara marana dukkadi shoka sa paridevana daurmanasyam upayasa. Jate tat pravartate. This etat pravartate occurs, jater, because of birth. So it's sort of liberating to reflect that all these terrible sufferings, objectively speaking, the reason we're suffering them is because we were born. Kevalasya metasya dukkha skandasya sambhavaha. Kevalasya evam. Thus, evam, this whole kevalasya, dukkha skandasya. Skanda means aggregate, totality. Dukkha skandasya, the aggregate of suffering, this whole mass of suffering occurs. Kevalasya evametasya dukkha skandasya sambhavaha. There is a coming to being, sambhavaha, of this whole aggregate of suffering. Okay, so that's gone from 1 to 12. And now we come to the sort of the optimistic part. How we cultivate the understanding by which suffering is cut off at source. Samskara mulam samskaran avidvan samskarotyata. Thus, ata, the samskaras which are the root of samsara, the confections which are at the root of the cycle of aimless wandering. Avidvan, the ignorant one. So vidvan means wise, knowing. Avidvan, not wise, not knowing. So avidvan, the ignorant one. It's singular masculine, the ignorant bloke. Avidvan samskarotyata. Samskri means, it's the same, it's the root, verbal root of samskara. It confects them. Thus does the ignorant one confect the confections that are the root of samsara. Avidvan karakastasman, therefore the ignorant one, avidvan karakas, he's the doer. Okay, Alexander people will like this. This is not me being interpretive. Karaka is from the root kri, to do, to make. That's very literally, it means the ignorant one is the doer. So this tallies with Alexander's observation that you're all perfect apart from what you're doing. The ignorant one is the doer. Navidvams tattvadarshanat, not the wise one, not the knowing one. Tattvadarshanat, because of tatvadarshana. Now, tatvadarshana is an ambiguous phrase. It can mean because of seeing the truth, tattva, reality, thatness. Darshana means to realize or to see or to look at. Okay, in a chapter of Mula Madhyamaka Karika, where Nagarjuna explores the senses, it emerges that what he means by darshana is more like looking at than seeing. And the same with shravana is more listening rather than just hearing. So it can be looking at reality, looking at what is. So that could be understood as an expression of zazen, as us looking, exploring reality. But an even less doing understanding of it is that tattvadarsha means reality doing itself. So this tallies with Alexander's, the right thing does itself. So not even making an effort to explore or look at anything, in the same way that the little fig tree, it grew by itself. It's tatvadarshana. Reality realizes itself. It doesn't always need us to be interfering. So more like, so what happened with the fig trees, when I gave up on it, that's when it revived. So there might be that sense included, tatvadarshana, because of realizing reality, or because of reality realizing. See, one of the reasons I've kind of, for the last few months, I've just been concentrating on gardening and zazen. And I recite these things that I'm reciting now from memory. And every day, just naturally, I go through the 8 thoughts of a great person, because they've been guiding me over the years, and it's just naturally what I reflect on. But I haven't been posting videos on MMK or studying the parts that I haven't already memorized, partly because to do the definitive translation is a fool's errand to want to do that. See, the next chapter that I was going to would have been the next one I carried on with. It talks about sadbhuta, which can mean being right, or it can mean true existence. The point is that as demonstrated by Tattvadarshana, Nagarjuna is just like Asvaghosha. They use these Sanskrit words which can be understood at all different levels. So to do a definitive translation is not possible. And I find myself just retreating back to the simplicity of the 8 thoughts of a great person. And that's why I was inspired to do this talk today, really. That's what I find most useful. Studying Nagarjuna, of course, informs our understanding of those, but tattva-darshanat, because reality realizes itself, there's nothing for us to do, including doing the definitive translation of MMK. Difficult to put into words, but if I devote myself all day just to sitting and being part of that unfolding, it's like it's back to sho-yoku, chi-soku in a way, really. I don't really aspire for anything beyond that. Avidyayam nirudayam samskaranama sambhavaha. Where ignorance is being stopped. Avidyayam nirudayam, so it's a locative absolute phrase. Where something is going on, or when something is going on. So, avidyayam, ignorance. Nirudayam, being stopped. Where ignorance is being stopped. Samskaranama sambhavaha. There is no coming into being of samskaras. There is no coming into being of confections. So he's talking about realizing emptiness, emptiness being realized. There's no separate tree. There's no separate zazen. There's no separate anything. There's no samskaras. There's no doing. So there's no physical samskaras, there's no mental samskaras, and there's no samskaras of speech. So the first verse, punarbhavaya samskaran avidya nivrita trida. Trida means 3 ways. So that the person enveloped in ignorance does the samskaras that lead to further becoming in the 3 ways: body, speech and mind. But avidyayam nirudayam samskaranama sambhavaha. Where ignorance is being stopped, is being ceased, there is no coming into being of samskaras. No mental doing, no physical doing, no verbal doing. No confecting, no mental confecting of separate things, no physical doings, no physical end gainings, physical efforts to gain an end, specific end. And if one's practicing zazen, keeping quiet, keeping silent, then no verbal samskaras either. No samskaras of speech. Avidyayam nirudayam samskaranama sambhavaha. Avidyaya nirodastu jnanasyasya bhavanat. But the stopping of ignorance, niroda, stopping, ceasing, of ignorance, avidyaya. But the stopping of ignorance, jnanasyasya bhavanat. Bhavanat is through the cultivation, jnanasyasya, of just this understanding, or of understanding of just this. So this is what I'm explaining, prajna. If you want to understand what prajna is, this is what Nagarjuna is explaining. Prajna fundamentally is understanding of the Buddha's teaching of dependent arising of suffering, understanding the Four Noble Truths, how suffering is dependently arisen, and because it's dependently arisen, because it's empty, it can be ceased. That's the point of practicing Zazen, to cease the dependent arising of suffering, because of cultivating this understanding. Avidyayam nirudayam samskaranam asambhavaha avidyaya nirodastu jnanasyasya bhavanat tasya nirodena, by the stopping of tasya, this one and that one. Tattan nabi pravartate, this one and that one, tattan nabi pravartate, do not advance, do not occur, they no longer arise. Dukkha skanda kevaloyam evam samyan nirudyate. Dukkha skanda, aggregate of suffering, the mass of suffering. Kevaloyam, this I am, kevalo, whole, totally. This whole mass of suffering, evam samyan nirudyate, evam, in this way, samyan, well and truly, nirudyate, stopped, ceased, destroyed. So there is the distillation of prajna, the seventh of the 8 thoughts of a great person. So finally we come to the most difficult of the 8 thoughts of a great person, nishprapancha in Sanskrit. Not, nish is not, prapancha, spinning things into self-existence, not objectifying things. What it means really is clarified with supreme clarity by Nagarjuna in Mula Madhyamaka Karika. So every chapter is an exploration by Nagarjuna of something which is misunderstood by his opponent as being a self-existing thing. So the first chapter is pratyaya pariksha, exploration of conditions, exploration of causes. So even today among scientists, people talk about this is the cause, this is the primary cause, this is the proximate cause. Nagarjuna is saying that is all only conventionally true. Ultimately, there is no separate cause. Causes are empty. And so it goes on, chapter by chapter. So he's training us. He's not really giving us information. He's training us how to think about everything on the basis of emptiness. If we don't think on the basis of emptiness, we think on the basis of prapancha. So prapancha, as in pancha skanda, means the 5 skandhas. Pra is a prefix, emphatic prefix. So prapancha means something like quintification. So multiplying everything by 5. So it's how we make things complicated and get everything in a big tangle because of prapancha, seeing things as separate and getting more and more and more convoluted. Convolution it just occurred to me now is a way of translating prapancha, but probably the best word is objectification. Everything is empty, but we turn everything into a separate object, into a separate thing. So philosophers call it hypostatization, which I think is a terrible word. A better one is reification, from the Latin fication, to make it into, and rei, a thing. So reification is not bad either. Now, the Chinese translation of Lamadhyā Makakāni done by Kumarajiva translates nishprapancha as fu-keron. Fu means not, ke means idle or trivial or frivolous, and ron means discussion. So no idle discussion, which is sort of captures the spirit of, in a sense, something like not philosophizing. I translated it in the past, but there is no word that conveys the right understanding of nishprapancha. To understand the meaning of nishprapancha requires a good teacher and at the same time one's own practice of zazen to cultivate one's own understanding of it. So hachi-dainin-gaku, as quoted by Master Dogen, in our lineage it's revered as the final teaching of the Buddha on the night before he died. But looking back in the Pali suttas, there's Samyuktagama, the connected discourses, the book of the eights. So if I remember the title of that collection of suttas correctly, there's a book of ones, or the book of twos, book of threes, like the book of fours, the Four Noble Truths and so on, the book of fives, five skandhas. Then the book of eights has got the mahā-puruṣa-vitakā in Pali. So vitakka is Pali for thoughts, vitarkā is the Sanskrit for thoughts. Mahā-purusha-vitakā, the thoughts of a great person, or the thoughts of the great human being, the Buddha. So in the Pali record, it's not the teaching of the Buddha on the night before he died, but there's a nice story which kind of confirms this sense of it being a progressive teaching, getting more and more difficult until we get to nishprapancha, nipapancha, I think it is in Pali. So the story goes that a monk, whose name I forget, is asked by some Brahmin or somebody what's the essence of the Buddha's teaching, and he says there are 7 truths. You know, there's have small desire, no satisfaction, enjoy complete seclusion, make effort towards nirvana, and to that end practice mindfulness, and that leads you to an integrated mode of being in which consciousness and unconsciousness integrated prevents the pollutants from holding sway. And number 7, finally, you cultivate understanding of the Buddha's teaching of the Noble Truths, wisdom. Speaking of which, I forgot to mention the metaphor in hachi-dainin-gaku for wisdom is the same one that appears in Asvaghosa's record, and it really emphasises that what the Buddha meant by wisdom is something very, very practical. Okay, it's not intellectual brilliance. So he uses 4 metaphors to show what wisdom is. The first one, an axe. Wisdom is like a sharp axe to cut down obstructions. So I think of it particularly, cutting down trees that stop you having a beautiful view over the forest. That sense of, so the afflictions, klesha, we want to cut them down, and so wisdom is like a sharp axe, which helps us cut down the afflictions so we can see clearly. And then wisdom is like a boat to get from A to B. So it's a vehicle for getting somewhere. Again, that dynamic sense of direction. We want to get to the far shore of nirvana. So wisdom is like a boat in which to navigate to the far shore of nirvana. Ya aja vaja vibhava upadaya pratityava so pratityanupadaya nirvana namupadishyate. So if you want to understand what nirvana is, there's no better place to go looking than Mula Madhyama Kakarika. Nagarjuna spells it out with unrivaled clarity. Whatever is going on, ya ajava javibhava upadaya pratityava. It's going on because of clinging, or because of pratitya, because of depending. So it's going on because of clinging, or because of the depending on one link after another in that cycle of becoming. So pratityanupadaya, that sa. That apratitya, without the depending, anupadaya, without the clinging, nirvanam upadishyate, is taught as nirvana. So Nagarjuna emphasizes that if we think samsara is one thing and nirvana is another thing that we're aspiring to, samsara is this thing we want to get rid of, the enemy, let's have a war on samsara, and nirvana is what we're aspiring to. That's prapancha, that's making them into 2 different things. So Nagarjuna emphasizes there's no dividing line between samsara and nirvana. Upadaya is clinging, to be let go of, and pratitya is dependent arising of suffering, to be stopped. So the chapter on nirvana starts with the verse yadya shunyam idam sarvam udayo nasti navyayaha pratityava nirodadva prahanadva kashya nirvanam ishyate. So the first verse is the opponent saying yadi shunyam idam sarvam. If all this is empty, yadi shunyam idam sarvam udayo nasti navyayaha, there is no arising and no passing. So the opponent doesn't agree that everything is empty. The opponent is the Zen realist who says that oak tree out there really exists. And if you say it's empty, how can there be the arising or the vanishing of the oak tree if it's just an empty nothing? In that case, prahanadva nirodadva, by letting go or by ceasing, kashya nirvana mishyate, of what is nirvana pursued? So the opponent recognizes that the pursuit of nirvana is by prahanad, letting go, or nirodhad, by ceasing. That's what the Buddha taught. The opponent's a Buddhist. He agrees with that. We pursue nirvana by letting go of things or by stopping things. Well, if things are empty, how can we do that? And Nagarjuna replies using exactly the same words, except for instead of saying shunyam, empty, he says ashunyam, not empty. Yad yashunyam idam sarvam udayo nasti navyayaha nirodhadva prahanadva kashya nirvana mishyate. If all this were not empty, there is no arising and no vanishing. Through the letting go or through the stopping of what is nirvana pursued. So what Nagarjuna is saying is, look, that oak tree is empty. And because things are empty, there can be the arising of the oak tree and the passing of the oak tree. If it was not empty, it wouldn't be subject to change, so it couldn't arise, it couldn't pass. But because the oak tree is empty, not a thing unto itself, there can be the arising of the empty oak tree, and there could be the death of the empty oak tree. If that were not so, by the letting go of what and by the stopping of what could we pursue nirvana? So it seems like a ontological discussion of emptiness. But really, Nagarjuna is not interested in that. He's interested, like the Buddha, in the wisdom that's like an axe or like a boat from getting A to B. He's interested in practice. And in practice, the pursuit of nirvana is by letting go, and it's by stopping. Okay, so that's what he's saying. Whatever is going on, whatever bullshit is going on in the shitstorm of samsara, that, without the clinging and without the continual depending on going round and round, causing the dependent arising of suffering, that is nirvana. That's what we're pursuing. So vīrya, effort, the effort we're making is in the direction of nirvana, peace, through letting go and through cessation of suffering. That's the practical wisdom, which is compared to a sharp axe, compared to a boat, and then compared to a light, a torch, which helps us see in darkness. So in a sense, wisdom, the point of it is to help us see in all those three metaphors, in a sense, because we get on a boat and get to the far shore and we can explore the far shore. We get an axe and cut down the trees and we can see beyond. And we get a light and we can see in the dark. And then the fourth metaphor is medicine. So it's about growth, it's about healing. Wisdom is a practical method for jijo ipen, naturally becoming one piece, healing. So this monk, who was a disciple of the Buddha, he understood all that. And so when he was asked by the Brahmin, or whoever it was, I'm sorry, I can't remember the sutra in detail, he replied with those 7 truths. And then he was modest enough to think that he might not have got to the bottom of everything. So he confirmed with the Buddha. He went to the Buddha and said, somebody asked me what the gist of your teaching was. And so I told him those 7 truths. And the Buddha said, very good, that's it, very, very, very good. Except one thing, and that's number 8, nisprapancha. So it's a nice story, although it kind of contradicts the tradition, which is nice, that this is the mahā-puruṣa-vitarkāḥ, the thoughts of a great person, is the ultimate teaching of the Buddha on the night before he died. It's emphasises that sense of them being progressive, and we shouldn't think, even if we've cultivated understanding of the 4 Noble Truths, that we've really got to the bottom of the Buddha's teachings, which are shunyata samyukta, connected with emptiness. The Buddha said that all his teachings were connected with emptiness. So cultivating wisdom is not the last word. The last thing is nisprapancha, not spinning things into self-existence. So what I'm wearing here is traditional 9-stripe robe that was sewn for me by Pierre Toulour. Pierre's having a heart operation later this month, so wishing him all the best for that. And in so wishing him, I want to remind him and myself of the distinction between 2 truths, the conventional truth and the ultimate truth. So nisprapancha is related with the ultimate truth. The tradition of sewing a robe is a convention. Okay. Becoming a monk is a convention, it's a tradition. I remember having this discussion with Guru Nishijima in my mid-20s when I was struggling with the idea of becoming a monk. My conclusion, 40 years on, is I would much rather be an authentic layman than a fake monk. So, if you're married, you are not a monk. That's just so bloody simple. It's only because of prapancha that people can fool themselves that there's such a thing as a non-celibate monk. A monk is somebody who's taken the vow of celibacy and is living a celibate life. And if you're not celibate, you're not a monk, you're a layman. It's that simple. Nothing wrong with being a layman, but there is something wrong for me in being a fake monk. So I don't agree with that. See, when I was in my 20s, it was a struggle. And in the conversations between me and Nishijima Sensei, there was no thought of being a non-celibate monk. The whole struggle was, could I be celibate or not? It just never occurred to me that you could be a non-celibate monk. Because we were studying the Shobogenzo, and Master Dogen also would never have entertained that possibility. But that kind of discussion belongs to the conventional truth. And see, I remember at that time I was trying to understand it. Nishijima said to me, he said it's only a tradition. Being a celibate monk is a tradition. It's not essential to realizing the truth. but it's a tradition. But he added, but in the Buddha's teaching, traditions are very important. So this is echoed by Nagarjuna, who says there are two truths, the conventional truth and the ultimate truth. And he says without the conventional truth, the ultimate truth is not taught. So we can't teach the Buddha's teaching without relying on the conventional truth. So the 9-striped robe is a manifestation of the importance of tradition and convention. But then Nagarjuna also says, without relying on the ultimate truth, nirvana is not realized. So the effort we're making is in pursuit of nirvana.